Camera. Here we go. Hello, everybody. It's Love the Connected Rose here again. Um, Getting ready to do another video. On this video, I wanted to preface it with a few things before I get started. Um, those that know my channel or know some of my other videos understand that of my connection with the Holy Spirit that I've talked about in all the videos. Um, Sometimes I'm called to put things out there, and lately I've been called to do this video, which is going to be with the start of probably several, because what I'm going to talk about in these videos are I'm going to talk about some of the spiritual stories, the spiritual connections, and the spiritual support that I've had throughout my life through many difficult times. I've got my spirit cat down here. He's trying to claw on me, so I'll pay attention to him. Anyway, and it was brought to my attention that, well, let me start back with this. Our family for many years has had a lot of spiritual things happen around catastrophes in the family, things that maybe aren't so good, that people, hard times that people have to go through. And for a long time, I felt like everybody did. But then the Spirit says, well, maybe not, maybe not. And it was also brought to my attention by somebody I love dearly that don't think that we're the only ones. And I really didn't think that. I know there's probably others like our family and like me out there, but I'm not so sure that all of them are sharing, and because I know I wasn't sharing with everyone all these spiritual happenings and that kind of thing. And it's not so much to teach you about them, it's more to show you how my connection was able to let me slow down, take the time, and recognize what might be taking place. And then a lot of confirmation on different ones and different things. So I want to preface this to say that all of us have God, the creator, inside of us. I mean, he made us, so he took parts of him and put them in us. And we're finally, really starting to realize that we do have God within us, and we do have special abilities that come with that in many different variations. But so these videos that I'm going to share, these stories, these spiritual stories that I'm going to share with you, could have happened a lot in your family. If they did, I'm begging of you to open up your hearts and start talking about them. Because when we share, there's power in sharing. And you know that I've talked about how we are all one, but it's not just me. Many people are now today. And many people are realizing this. And so I thought, well, it's not going to hurt, because opening up to share these things, there may be some out there that have seen oddities and things like that have happened in their life, but they haven't recognized the connection. Maybe people are busy. People are busy working, trying to make a living, taking care of their families. And it's not that any of us that might have had these spiritual things happen to us are any better. It's not all about that. So please, I'm prefacing that with God's love to tell you it's not about that. What it's about is to show you that not only do you get these things or can see these things, but you also can get confirmation that's exactly what's going on. And I'm really glad that I did have a loved one point out to me. Don't try to dictate. I wouldn't be doing that anyway. That's not me. But sometimes when I try to get something out, when I'm talking and I'm excited about it, it does maybe come across to some people that way. And trust me, that is not my objection here at all. And it's also not to be about me. Because trust me, I've got other things I'd like to do and rather do. I'm a single person. I mean, I could focus on, just trying to find somebody for the rest of my life, but I have to honor this valuable and beautiful connection that was given to me. And if I'm led to believe through thought that's projected to me that I need to share these things, then so be it. I will do it because I have followed this spiritual connection all of my life. And I say he because I believe it is God. If not God, it's one of his it's one of his channelers or his connected people that's been with me all my life. So I will do what I need to do when it comes to that. So I think I've explained it enough about why I'm doing this, and this is going to be the first video that I talk about. The first adult spiritual happening, which throughout my life, I might have had some minor ones and smaller ones when I was a child, when I was growing up, but there was room for me to learn about life in there. It wasn't just about my spiritual connectedness there, but there were a few things that happened. But once I became an adult and had to go through any kind of trial or error, I always went to my Holy Spirit, and I always talked to him as if I'm talking to you right now. And I treated him like my very best friend. And when I would talk and spill my heart out, then things would be given to me and help would be given to me. Maybe not that day, but I was also given the ability to probably see the signs that he was putting in front of me and acknowledging or kind of pondering over them as to what they could mean, and then following through with the path that I should go down. And most of the time, it was maybe two paths or two perceptions that he might give me. That's when I went back to college. It was that way, but and other times it was just specific. But when these things happened, I knew they were relevant in some way. So I'm going to start talking to you about uh, my son and his wife. When they first got married, they were very young. Uh, I was married at the time. We had a large farm, and we had a really beautiful lawn wedding for them. Uh, they were very young. I think maybe 17, I want to say, uh, or 18. But she was also pregnant with my very first grandchild, So we were all excited and couldn't wait, to meet that child. Um, and he was due in September. Uh, but anyway, so September came along, and I was in a marriage I shouldn't have been in. It was kind of, and I'm just going to tell you, it was a rebound type thing, but it was probably the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life, and that's another story for another time. But um, so the pregnancy was getting closer and getting closer, and I get a phone call this one night and said that she had been taken to the hospital, and I went to the hospital right away because I was so excited the baby was coming, and we hadn't kind of expected. I think I kind of want to say it was 22nd, and God forgive me if she'll correct me if I'm wrong on the date. But so I went to the hospital, and I was sitting there with her brother in the hallway and stuff, and waiting and waiting and waiting. And I had I'd had a couple of kids myself, three, and so I I started feeling like there's something not right. And I told her brother, I said, something's wrong. Something's not right here. And he goes, on now. He goes, you're just worrying. And I said, no, this is taking a little too long. I don't understand. I just, something's not right. And all at once we see through the doors in the hospital, these people come out with a little crash cart, and they come running through the doors with that cart, pushing that cart. And we stood up, and I looked, and when they went by, I told him, I said, that's our baby. And he goes, oh, no, 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 I said, yes, that's our baby. And so I ran to the place that they took him in, and I could see that they were working on him with an ambu bag. That meant, I think that's what they called it. It was a bag that was putting air into his lungs, forcing air into his lungs so he could breathe properly. And I was just got because I could see them working on him like crazy in there. And then the one nurse came over and shut the curtain. Um, so I waited outside because I knew it was him. And I didn't see my son. He was probably back there with his mom, the baby's mom. And I, at one point, somebody was going in or something, and I asked if I could go in, that I was the baby's grandmother, and could I please go in there? And so somebody let me in because they were supposed to have called an ambulance to take him to Children's or Hospital in Seattle. And so that was taking quite a bit of time, and I wanted to be in there with the baby. I went in, and little Terry, that was his name, he took a hold of my finger with his little hand, and he held onto my finger, and he kept squeezing it. He'd let up, and he'd squeeze, and he'd let up, and he'd squeeze. And I was able to make a connection, a loving connection with him. And I told them, I said, where's that ambulance? It's not here yet. It's taking way too long. And they just kind of looked at each other funny. And I got the feeling they were just kind of waiting to see if he didn't pass. I wasn't sure of that, but I had that feeling. And I just said, that ambulance needs to get here. This child wants to live. And so they got cracking. And the next thing I know, maybe, I don't know, 15 minutes from there, and they were still working on him. They brought him to the ambulance, and they took him to Children's Hospital. Wow, I mean, what a terrible start for my son and his wife. It was horrendous, and she had been to the doctor and complained about the pain and stuff she'd had. And at that time, the doctor said, well, you teenagers, you want to go and you have fun. And then when you're in pain, you holler about it. Well, she was in pain because he had a urinary tract blockage in his, I guess when they're in Demetro or whatever you call it, when they're inside you, they have to urinate into the amniotic fluid. Then that helps develop their lungs, which I had no clue. No one had a clue as to that actually needed to take place. But that's what had happened, and that's why he was struggling to breathe. He was a fully developed young little boy, baby, that didn't have the lung capacity to keep that little big body alive. I mean, I think he might have weighed 7 or 8 pounds, something like that. And so all the way to the hospital, they did use the bag, and they kept him alive, and then they hooked him to all kinds of machines down there. Well, of course, the whole family, our family was really close, and we were all devastated over it. People would ask how he's doing. I would go down as much as I could. I would go down there and be with the kids when I could be with the kids and be around the baby. Um, I believe it was in there about 7 days, but each day I was down there, and the bad choice of a man that I had that time would say things to me like, you're not taking care of your duties. You need to be home here and taking care of the house and stuff like that. And I thought, you have got to be kidding me. That is my son's baby and my first grandchild, and I am where I need to be. And that's what I told him. And I wasn't going to change. But I'm the kind of person that lets some of that, or at that time I was, some of that bother me somewhat. And so I did come home to, do the laundry and run this vacuum and stuff this one day. And I'm running the vacuum in the living room, and I turn off the vacuum, and on TV, somebody's interviewing Mr. Rogers. Well, that just struck me like, they're interviewing Mr. Rogers? That's strange. Why would they interview Mr. Rogers? I mean, he's on a children's program. He does a lot of good for children and stuff, but they're interviewing him. So I thought, well, I'm just going to listen and see what he says. And they said, Mr. Rogers, they asked him a few, I don't know, I think they were just off the wall questions. I can't even remember what they were, but I remember this one. They asked Mr. Rogers, they said, if you had to tell your children the most important thing that you'd ever have to tell them in life, what would that be? And Mr. Rogers, he took his time. He was a quiet soul. He was a good soul. Nice man. And he kind of looked around and he said, well, he said, I guess if I had to tell them anything that was the most important thing in life I could tell them, I'd have to tell them we don't always get what we want. And wow, that just struck me to my bone, to my heart. I thought, wow, how that is very true. We don't always get what we want, especially I knew that with what was going on in our family at that particular moment. And I'm going to preface it a little bit here too, because my sister-in-law at the time and my brother had a cerebral palsy little girl, and she was not quite 7 when the baby was born, but and she was calling me and asking, oh, how is he doing? And I would keep her posted, and the whole family would just be calling and keep things posted. And my other sister told me, she said, I was sitting on the couch and I was almost asleep, and I heard a woman's voice, and she said I think it was Mother Amrine, my dad's mother. She said it sounded just like her, and it said, your nephew has died. And she thought that it meant my son, the father of the baby. And later on, I'll explain to you what it actually meant. But this was given to her, and she swears it was our grandmother that came through to her and said that. It was her voice. She recognized the voice. Also, my sister-in-law that called me when their baby girl had been born at Children's and had the cerebral palsy and kept having seizures and things like that. It was a terrible time in their life for what they had to go through. And my sister-in-law wanted to see the baby so bad, but she could not. I just can't bring myself. I can't bring myself to go down there again. That hospital just has such sad memories for me. I just can't do it. And I said, I understand. I understand what you guys went through was enough. And I'll keep you posted on, what's going on. Well, a little while later, I think the guy I was married to came home. I don't even care about his name. You don't need to either. But anyway, came home. And I get a phone call from my son. And my son said, the doctor said that he doesn't have much time and you need to get down here. So, oh God, I just dropped everything and I got in the car and I drove to Seattle. And when I got there, I saw my son's dad and I had been divorced and he had remarried to a person. And I saw her in the hall and she was just crying up a storm. And she came at me and was just crying and shaking. And I just said, what's wrong? And they said, he's dying. And I thought, oh, I'm not one of these that gives up. I, I always go to my Heavenly Father. So I said, I asked where the chapel was to somebody. And I went down to the chapel and I was thumbing through the Bible, because I've done this before and it happens to land on a saying or something that can be helpful to you at that time. And I was looking through the Bible to try to find something that was going to help me at that time, because I wasn't ready to accept that. Okay? I got to back up a minute. I got to back up. The night before this all happened, it had been a real rainy night. And I was sleeping on the couch because someone said they didn't want to be disturbed, and he took our child to bed with him. But I slept on the couch because I was having a hard time sleeping during those times. And it was pouring down rain. And I woke up and I was looking out the picture window to the little pond we had. And I look up in the corner of the window and I see this heart. You know how the vapors when it's raining will create a sweat like thing, and that's what it had done, and it was a perfect heart. And then streamers were running down that window from that perfect heart. And I thought, God, I thought, Lord, what does that mean? And the words, they were male words. I didn't recognize the voice, but it was, have heart. Becky, have heart. And I thought, have heart with that simple son of a bitch that just chewed me out for not doing what I was supposed to do. I was thinking, no, Lord, I won't have heart with him. I will not do that. That was my response to that. God knew me. God knew I was a fighter. God knew I would stand up for what I believed was right or wrong. But anyway, I did finally go to sleep, and the next day is when I got the phone call. So there, I got a little ahead of myself. I didn't mean to do that, but I hope I haven't lost the tracking here. So when I get to the hospital and I see her, my ex-husband's wife, crying like that, I'm not willing to give up. Okay, I'm not willing to give up and just break down and start crying. So I did go down and I was thumbing through the Bible and I couldn't, and nothing was happening. Nothing was happening. And usually I get some sort of a sign of some sort. And all at once, as quick as I knew I had to get down to the chapel and pray, I knew I had to get back up and go back upstairs. I felt like you got to get back upstairs. So I went back upstairs and the doctors came toward me. And I don't know if any of you guys are old enough, you probably are, to remember that commercial of these doctors they used to show where they'd be talking to you and they'd have these big noses. It was a commercial of some sort. Well, that's the way they looked to me when they came up to me. And when they came up to me, they said, listen, the baby's not got much longer to live, but we have to pull all of his support systems because the mother has asked permission to hold the baby before he dies. And I started to go, because the Lord knows me. I started to go, no, I started to go like, no. And all at once, that verbiage came through my mind again. Becky, have heart. And I started to cry. And oh, then I could accept the fact that that was going to take place, and I could honor the fact that my daughter-in-law wanted to hold her child before that happened. They said, we're taking the family into a room. And I'm going to back up again because I missed part of my sister's story when she heard my grandmother's voice. She had a vision also at the same time, uh, where there was a rocking chair in a room, and there was a woman with her head down, and her hair kind of looked blonde, and the sun was shining in on their kind of blondish red hair. And she thought that it could have been our other sister-in-law at the time. She said, but it said your nephew has died. And so she had shared that vision with me over the phone when she told me that she'd also heard Grandmother Amrine's voice. And so I wasn't expecting anything, but they said, we're bringing the family into the room, and we're going to allow everybody to get a chance to hold him, but the mother wants to hold him first. And so when I walked into that room, I couldn't believe it. There was my sister's vision. My daughter-in-law was sitting in the rocking chair, holding the baby with her head down, and the sun was coming through, shining on her hair. And I thought the Lord had let my sister see that before it had happened. I was nervous, and I'm going to tell you why I was nervous. Because at one time, before I'd ever gotten married the second time, I was dating a person, and that's a long story. I mean, people will kind of push you and say, you need to do this, you need to find somebody and all that. But anyhow, I was using protection. Protection broke. I had the 2 kids to take care of. By the time that happened, I was seeing things in that person that I did not want around my family. I was seeing possible drug handling. I was seeing that he owned a handgun. And when that happened, we had a good friend that worked with doctors. And I told her exactly when it happened. And I was due to, have my cycle the next week or so. And it didn't come that week. So as a precaution, she knew of a doctor that would clean you out. This was before, I mean, it was right away. It was just for missing a period. And so, but I knew that I probably could have gotten pregnant because that had broke like that. And, oh, trust me, that was a hard decision. And I had a long talk with God about it, and I asked for forgiveness. It's always hard for a woman to make any of those kinds of decisions, but I had to weigh everything out. And I did, and I knew this was a person that I never wanted in our lives again. And so I have felt that, or wanted to feel that God had forgiven me, but I'd never heard or had that thought put in my mind. So I'm saying, my kids don't even know this, okay? The kids that had the baby, they don't even know this. I was sitting in the chair, probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 chairs from where the mom was. And they were passing Terry around. And I thought, oh God, I hope he doesn't die in my hands. Because I was scared to death that he would. Well, when it came my turn, the doctor came in at that time and listened. And he said he has passed away. I thought for sure that I would just feel like, oh my God, that I had, went to hell and back. God gave me peace in that moment. God let me know in that moment that I was forgiven. And I wasn't devastated. Okay, so we come out of the room and we're all leaving, and of course we're sad. And I step out into the other room, and we weren't out in the hallway yet, and I see my sister-in-law. She's coming to me, and she says, Becky, where's the baby? Where's the baby? And she's shaking like a leaf, and she said, I've got to see him. I've got to see him. And I said, come with me. So I took her back, and the baby was laying there, and my brother was in the room too. Her ex-husband. Well, I can't remember if they were ex then or not, but my brother was there too. My sister-in-law had to touch him. She had to touch him. Said, I have to touch him. I have to say goodbye. And so she's up there and she's just touching his little hand and rubbing his arm and, sending him with love. And I'm standing back watching this, and my brother couldn't bring himself to touch him. He might have wanted to, but he's a guy, he didn't. And when I'm standing back, I get this vision. Oh Lord, what does this mean? Because she couldn't come to the hospital. She couldn't do any of that. And she was just doing it all. And God put into my mind, Melissa, their child was cerebral palsy. And I thought, oh, I don't even want to think that. Why am I thinking that? That's what I thought. Why am I thinking that? Well, not then. And I think I told you before that he had lived 7 days. He'd lived 7 days. And I missed a real important part, and I'll go back in a minute, but he'd lived 7 days. Well, later on, when Melissa turned 7, that's going to be my next spiritual story that I'll share with you. But I need to back up here a minute, because before we got to the part where it got critical to where Terry was passing away, there was a night that I went down there, the night that I'd seen Mr. Rogers on TV. There was Mr. Rogers on TV, and there was also the half heart that I was given. And out my bedroom window in the middle of winter, or when it's starting to get cold, the primroses were blooming. And I thought that to be odd. But that night that I'd seen Mr. Rogers on TV, I went to the hospital, and the kids were in there with the baby. They had that little bird that was with Snoopy, Woodstock, I think you call him. They had bought for him, and they had it in there. And all at once, all the alarms started going off. They just, and there was a critical situation, and all the nurses and the doctors come running. And my kids came out of the door, bam, bam, bam. And they were swearing as GD hospital. They were beside themselves from the pain of it all. And they went out onto the balcony. And I was 32-year-old grandmother, and I thought, How am I going to help these kids? So when I walked out the door and they were standing there crying, and I walked up to them, I put my arms around them, and Mr. Rogers' point came to me, and I said, you know, we've all been praying for a miracle here. You have been praying for one. I've been praying for one. The whole family's been praying for one. But I have to tell you this, we don't always get what we want. And I thank you for allowing me to share this today. I've shared some, I love sharing the spiritualness of this, and I'm okay with sharing what I went through too, because it was all part of the spiritual plan that I think that both Terry and my little niece Melissa ended up being angels to our family. And later, in the next video, I'll go on to that next one. But for now, I'm just going to say to you, you that have experienced some of these same things that I'm sharing with you, I've been told, I don't know, I've just been called to, we've got to start opening up our hearts, and we've got to start sharing these things to people, because for one thing, there probably are lots of families out there, like my loved one told me, that are just like us. And I hope this will spur them to share too, because it's a good thing to do. It's a good thing for humanity to do, because it shows how connected we are to our Maker. And so I'm asking all of you that have had this happen to do that. And the others that maybe haven't ever experienced, but you've seen oddities in your life that kind of make you think, like the Mr. Rogers thing, or that's odd or something, then maybe that the next time something like that happens, you just kind of slow down and ponder as to why that might be striking you odd. You might not get that answer that day. You might not get it until later. And the next video that I'll be sharing is kind of I told you I'm not perfect and I'm not professional, so God's just wanting me to share these stories. I have to back up and talk about when she first got pregnant and the spiritualness that took place there. So that will be my next video, is about that. And I'm sorry that I'm getting them out of sequence here. Maybe I'll get better as I go through my spiritual stories in life. I hope that I will. But for now, I'm going to sign off with all the love to all of you out there. Know that we are all one. We are all one. And what affects one of us affects us all. And God bless the Ukraine. And let's all send out our love for humanity and for the love of God to take over. Aren't we tired of this violence and this hate? I think so. So until the next time, it's Love the Connected Rose, signing off. Thank you.